The pounding came again, knock, knock, knock. Slow, heavy, and echoing through the wooden walls of his small shop. Kwame froze, his hand still clutching the oil lamp that flickered weakly against the night. The sound wasn't coming from the door, no, it was from the back, the side that faced the cemetery. The night wind howled through the cracks in the walls, carrying the scent of wet earth and the faint whisper of voices that didn't belong to anyone living. His heart hammered against his ribs as he turned his trembling face toward the back window. Through the dusty glass, the moon cast its light across the rows of crooked graves. And then he saw it, the shadow of a man standing between the tombstones, not moving, not breathing. The shadow lifted its hand. And knocked again. Kwame's knees went weak. "Who's there?" he whispered, but his voice came out like a cracked breath. No one answered. Then, slowly, the door behind him creaked open on its own. He dropped the lamp. The flame went out, and darkness swallowed the shop whole. That was the night Kwame realized he had made the worst mistake of his life, building his shop beside the cemetery. Before that night of terror, life in the village of Abuesa had been simple and quiet. The people were kind, the air always smelled of roasted maize, and the children's laughter filled the dusty roads every evening. Kwame was a young man with big dreams. His hands were skilled, his heart honest, and he worked hard to make a living as a carpenter. But Kwame's dreams were bigger than his little workshop under the mango tree. He wanted a real shop, one with a door, shelves, and a sign that said, "Kwame's Fine Furniture." He wanted travelers passing through the village to see his work and remember his name. There was only one problem. Land in the center of the village was too expensive for him to buy. Every corner, every stretch of road was already taken by traders selling yams, cloth, or beads. He went from house to house, asking if anyone would rent him a space, but they all said the same thing. "Sorry, Kwame. Maybe try near the old cemetery. No one wants to build there." At first, Kwame laughed. Who would want to set up shop beside the graves of the dead? But when he went to see the land himself, he found it was cheap, very cheap, and big enough for all his dreams. "It's perfect," he said to himself. "The dead won't buy furniture, but they won't disturb me either." He signed the papers the very next day. When he began building, people from the village shook their heads and muttered warnings. Old Nana Efua, the herbalist, called out to him one morning as he hammered planks together. "Kwame," she said, her voice raspy with age. "That ground you're standing on doesn't belong to you. The spirits walk there at night. You should leave before they remember your name." Kwame only smiled politely. "Nana, I don't believe in ghost stories. I believe in hard work." She spat on the ground and muttered something under her breath. "You will believe when the dead start to knock." He laughed then, brushing off her words like sawdust. For weeks, he worked from dawn till dusk. The shop rose proudly beside the cemetery fence, built strong with red earthwood and polished till it shone like honey in the sun. Every morning, Kwame whistled as he walked, sometimes glancing at the silent tombs nearby. The graves were old, their names half faded from the stones. There was one grave, though, that caught his eye every time, a tall, dark headstone shaped like a gate. No one in the village seemed to know who was buried there. Probably some chief from long ago, he told himself. Soon the shop was complete. He filled it with chairs, tables, and carved stools shaped like lions. On opening day, children ran around admiring his work, and elders nodded in approval. Kwame sold 3 chairs and a bed frame before noon. He went home that night full of joy. But when he came back the next morning, the bed frame was gone. At first, he thought it was a thief. But the lock on the door was still in place, untouched. Only the footprints outside the window confused him, small, muddy prints that led from the cemetery fence to the shop, and then disappeared. Strange, he murmured. Maybe the rain washed the rest away. He made a new bed frame to replace the lost one. But that same week, it happened again, this time a stool vanished. Once more, there were muddy footprints at the back, and the smell of damp soil hung heavy in the air. Whispers began to spread through Aboasa. They say the spirits are buying furniture from Kwame's shop. No, they are taking what belongs to them. Didn't you hear? That land used to be a burial ground for chiefs. He should move before they drag him along with the wood. Kwame tried to laugh it off, but fear began to creep into his heart. He started closing the shop early, locking it before the sun went down. Still, every few nights, something went missing. A stool. A hammer. A carving knife. And always, those strange footprints appeared. Then one evening, as the sun bled red behind the baobab trees, Kwame heard something that froze him in place, a soft hum, coming from behind the shop. It sounded like someone singing an old funeral song, low and broken. He slowly turned his head toward the cemetery fence. No one was there. But the humming continued. He felt the hairs rise on the back of his neck. "It's just the wind," he whispered, though his voice trembled. That night, he couldn't sleep. Even at home, miles away from the shop, he kept hearing that tune in his head. The next morning, he returned early, determined to ignore his fear. The air was unusually cold for a village morning, and mist hung thick around the graves. As he reached his shop door, something caught his eye, the tall grave with the gate-shaped headstone. It was open. The stone gate had cracked right down the middle, and a deep, black hole gaped beneath it, as if the earth itself had swallowed something, or someone, alive. Kwame stepped back, clutching his chest. "This can't be real," he whispered. He ran to the shop, locked the door behind him, and sat in silence, his heart thudding. But silence didn't stay long. From the back wall, the one facing the open grave, came the sound of a single knock. Then another. And another. Each knock was louder, heavier, closer. The floorboards shook under his feet. "Who's there?" he shouted, but his voice broke. The knocking stopped. He held his breath. For a moment, there was only silence, and then, slowly, the door behind him began to creak open on its own. The smell of wet soil filled the air. Kwame turned around. And there, framed in the doorway, was a figure covered in dirt, its face hidden in shadow. It stepped inside. And the door slammed shut. Kwame stumbled backward, his hand searching for anything to defend himself. His fingers brushed against a wooden stool, and he grabbed it tightly, raising it like a weapon. "Stay back," he shouted, though his voice quivered like a frightened child's. The figure didn't move fast, it just stood there, swaying slightly in the dim light filtering through the cracks of the wall. Then, with a slow, scraping sound, it lifted its head. Kwame's breath caught in his throat. The face that looked back at him was not one of flesh, it was pale as clay, eyes sunken deep, mouth partly open as though it had forgotten how to close. Its hair was tangled with dead grass, and bits of soil still clung to its ears. Kwame's legs nearly gave way. What do you want?" he whispered. The figure's lips moved, but the voice that came out wasn't quite human, it sounded like wind blowing through hollow wood. "You built your shop on my grave." Kwame's heart stopped for a second. The figure raised an arm, pointing toward the back wall of the shop, the same side where the tall, gate-shaped grave stood. "You took my rest," it whispered, "now you must give me what is mine." Before Kwame could speak, the lamp beside him flickered violently and went out, plunging the room into darkness. The only sound was the slow, dragging footsteps of the figure as it moved closer. He could smell the earth, damp, ancient, and heavy with the scent of death. Kwame's mind screamed at him to run, and somehow his legs obeyed. He bolted for the door, struggling with the latch before wrenching it open and bursting into the night. He didn't stop running until he reached the village square, where the light of the moon fell on the quiet huts. His chest heaved, and his skin was slick with sweat. He turned once more, half expecting to see the thing following him, but there was nothing. Only silence. He collapsed on the ground, trembling. By dawn, the villagers found him sitting in front of the well, staring into space. When they asked what had happened, he told them everything: the knocks, the footprints, the open grave, and the creature that spoke. Most of them gasped in fear, but a few shook their heads. Maybe he dreamed it, they whispered. Maybe he worked too hard. But Nana Efua, the old herbalist, only sighed deeply. Did I not warn you? She said. The ground remembers who sleeps in it. You have disturbed something that was meant to stay buried. Kwame begged her for help. Please, Nana, tell me what to do. I didn't mean to offend any spirit. I just wanted to work. She nodded slowly. You will have to make peace with the one whose grave you have built upon. But first, you must find out who he was. Only then can you return what belongs to him. Kwame swallowed hard. How will I find that out? The name on the headstone is too old to read. Then you must ask the oldest mouth in this village, she said. Go to old Kweku Ata, the storyteller. He knows the dead better than any living man. That night, Kwame went to see old Kweku Ata. The man sat by his fire, his white beard glowing orange in the flames. When Kwame told him about the grave, Kweku's eyes grew wide. The tall headstone shaped like a gate, he asked slowly. Yes, Kwame said. It cracked open 2 nights ago. The old man leaned back, his face shadowed by the firelight. Oh, that grave belongs to Koto Mensa, the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper. Kwame repeated, confused. Kweku nodded. Many years ago, before even my father was born, there was a man named Koto Mensa. He was a powerful blacksmith, not of iron, but of spirits. His duty was to build the gates that separate the world of the living from the world of the dead. When he died, he was buried at the edge of the cemetery, and a gate was carved upon his tomb to keep his spirit at rest. It is said that if that gate is ever broken, the path between both worlds will open again. Kwame's skin prickled with cold. But the gate, it's broken now. Then the spirit of the gatekeeper no longer guards the boundary, Kweku said. And if he has come to you, it means he is looking for something that was taken from him. Something you must give back. Kwame's mouth went dry. But I didn't take anything from him. I only built my shop beside his grave. The old man looked at him sadly. The ground you dug for your shop, did you not take the wood and nails, the earth and stones from that land? Kwame nodded slowly. Then you took from him, Kweku said simply. And he wants it back. Kwame's heart sank. What do I do? You must go back to the shop, Kweku said, his stone grave. Take palm oil, white cloth, and a bell. Pour the oil on the floor and call his name 3 times. When he answers, tell him you will rebuild the gate and return his rest. Kwame stared at him. And if he doesn't answer? Kweku's eyes flickered toward the cemetery beyond the trees. Then you will hear the knocking again. And this time, he will not stop until you open the door. That night, Kwame returned to the shop, carrying a small gourd of palm oil, a white cloth, and a bell. The moon hung low, and the mist was thicker than before. His hands trembled as he pushed open the creaky door. The air inside was colder than it should have been. His breath came out in clouds. The wood of the walls groaned softly, as though the whole shop were breathing. He set the items on the floor and poured the palm oil in a small circle, just as the old man had said. Then he took a deep breath and called out, Koto Mensa. Nothing happened. Only silence. He rang the bell once. The sound echoed strangely, as if it were ringing inside a tunnel. Koto Mensa, he called again, louder this time. Still nothing. He took a deep breath, his heart pounding in his chest. Koto Mensa, he shouted, his voice shaking the walls. The bell stopped ringing on its own. Then came the sound of heavy footsteps behind the back wall. Thud, thud, thud. Kwame froze. He turned toward the sound, his hands trembling so badly he almost dropped the bell. A shadow moved along the wall, tall, thin, and swaying like smoke. Then, from the direction of the cemetery, came a sound that made his blood turn to ice, the deep groan of stone grinding against stone, as though something enormous had begun to move. He ran to the window and looked toward the grave. The gate-shaped tomb was glowing faintly, a dull red light pulsing from the crack in its center. The ground around it trembled. Kwame stumbled backward, shouting in fear, and that was when a voice, soft but clear, whispered from behind him. "You called me." He turned slowly. Standing in the middle of the shop was the figure again, the gatekeeper, but this time, its face was clearer, its eyes glowing like burning coals. In one hand, it held a long, iron key, blackened and dripping with something dark. "You opened the path," it said. "Now you must close it again." Kwame's heart slammed in his chest. "How? Tell me how." The gatekeeper raised the key, pointing it toward the back wall of the shop. "Someone has already crossed," it whispered. "And before dawn, they will come for you." The words echoed in Kwame's mind long after the gatekeeper's shadow had vanished. "Someone has already crossed, and before dawn, they will come for you." The night outside was silent, but not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that makes your ears ring, the kind that presses against your chest like a hand. Kwame's body trembled as he backed away from the spot where the spirit had stood. His eyes darted to the window, the glow from the broken grave had faded, but he could still feel the presence of something watching him. He wanted to run, to leave the shop, the cemetery, the village, everything, but something inside him whispered that running would not help. If someone had crossed, they would find him no matter where he hid. He swallowed hard and forced his shaking legs to move. He needed help, not from people, but from someone who understood the world of spirits. There was only one person left who might know what to do. Nana Efua. He grabbed his lantern, lit it, and hurried into the night. The wind moaned through the trees as he ran down the path toward her hut at the far edge of Aboasa. Crickets chirped faintly, but every now and then the sound would break, as if the night itself were listening. When he reached the old woman's hut, he banged on the wooden door. "Nana Efua. Please, it's me, Kwame. Open up." After a few seconds, the door creaked open, and the old woman appeared, her white hair tied with a red scarf. She took one look at him, his pale face, trembling hands, and nodded. "The gatekeeper came to you, didn't he?" Kwame nodded, panting. He said, "Someone crossed over. He said they're coming for me before dawn." Nana Efua's eyes darkened. "Then the path has opened." She turned and motioned for him to come inside. Her hut smelled of herbs and smoke. Strange charms hung from the ceiling, feathers, bones, dried roots tied in twine. A small clay pot burned with incense on the floor. She poured him a calabash of water and spoke softly. "Listen carefully, Kwame. When the gatekeeper's grave breaks, the door between the worlds opens. The dead can walk, but only for a short time, until the sun rises. They come searching for something unfinished. You said you built your shop on his grave, yes?" Kwame nodded. "Then you disturbed the boundary that protected this village. Whatever crossed from that gate is not just looking for you, it's looking for a way to stay here. Forever." Kwame's hands shook so badly that he nearly dropped the calabash. "What can I do, Nana? I didn't mean to bring this upon anyone." She went to her shelf and took down a small clay jar filled with black powder. "Take this," she said. "It's ash mixed with ground kola and charcoal from sacred wood. Sprinkle it around your shop before midnight. Do not speak to anyone on your way there, and when you reach the shop, do not answer if you hear a voice call your name, even if it sounds like your mother. If you do, that spirit will claim you." Kwame clutched the jar tightly. And if I do all this, will it stop them? Nana Efua's face was grave. It might. But if the spirit that crossed is already bound to you, then the night will not end until one of you is gone. Her words made his stomach twist with fear. But he nodded, thanked her, and left her hut, clutching the jar close to his chest. The path back to the cemetery was darker than before. The moon hid behind the clouds, and the trees whispered as the wind brushed through them. Every few steps, he thought he heard footsteps behind him, soft, dragging steps that stopped when he stopped. He tried not to look back. Finally, he reached his shop. The wooden door creaked as he pushed it open. Inside, everything looked as he had left it, the tables, the stools, the tools scattered across the floor. Nothing seemed different, but the air felt heavier, as if the room itself was holding its breath. He took a deep one of his own and began to sprinkle the ash around the floor, murmuring a prayer under his breath the way Nana Efua had taught him. But halfway through, he froze. From outside the window came the faint sound of someone calling his name. Kwame. It was a woman's voice, soft, almost gentle. His heart thudded painfully. Kwame, my son, the voice called again, clearer this time. His eyes widened. It sounded like his mother's voice. But that was impossible. His mother had died 5 years ago. He clenched his jaw and forced himself to keep sprinkling the ash. Do not answer if you hear a voice call your name, even if it sounds like your mother. Kwame, the voice said again, closer now, almost whispering into his ear through the wooden wall. It's cold out here. Won't you let me in? He shut his eyes tight. You're not her, he said under his breath. A long silence followed. Then the voice changed, deeper, sharper, angrier. Let me in, it screamed. Kwame jumped, nearly dropping the jar. The window rattled as if someone was slamming on it from outside. He ran to the back door and pushed it shut, bolting it tight. The pounding grew louder. Let me in, the voice roared, shaking the walls of the shop. Then, silence. Kwame stood in the middle of the room, his chest rising and falling fast. The silence stretched for what felt like forever. He thought it was over. He thought the spirit had gone. But then he heard something new, a faint sound from the roof above him. Tap, tap, tap. Like fingers crawling across the wood. He backed away slowly, staring up at the ceiling. The tapping grew faster, heavier, until suddenly, with a splintering crack, the wooden roof split open and something fell through, landing with a heavy thud on the floor. Dust filled the air. Kwame coughed, waving his hand in front of his face. Who's there? He shouted. The dust cleared, and what he saw made his blood run cold. It was a coffin. An old, rotted coffin had fallen straight through the roof and landed in the middle of his shop. Its lid creaked open slowly, and from inside, a pale hand reached out, its fingernails long and dark. Kwame stumbled backward, his back hitting the wall. His lantern flickered. Then, from inside the coffin, a face rose, hollow-eyed, the same red glow burning in its sockets that he'd seen in the gatekeeper's eyes. But this one was different. The mouth stretched into a smile that was far too wide. Thank you for opening the door, it whispered. Kwame's scream tore through the night as the thing climbed out of the coffin, its bones cracking with each step. It reached for him with both arms. And before he could run, the light from the lantern exploded, plunging everything into darkness. The darkness swallowed everything. For a heartbeat, there was only silence, then came the sound of slow breathing, rough and rattling, just a few inches from Kwame's face. He couldn't see, but he could feel it, the cold air, the smell of damp earth and decay pressing against his skin. His chest rose and fell in fast, shallow gasps. He dared not move. Then the breathing stopped. The silence stretched so long that he almost thought the thing had vanished, until a bony hand brushed his arm. Kwame screamed, stumbling backward into a shelf that toppled over, sending tools crashing to the floor. The faint glow of the dying lantern gave him just enough light to see the creature's shadow, tall, twisted, its head bent to one side as though its neck had once been broken. "Leave me alone," Kwame shouted, grabbing a piece of broken wood and swinging it wildly. The figure dodged, the movement unnaturally fast, and hissed, a sound that didn't belong to anything living. It lunged. Kwame ducked and rolled beneath the table, scrambling toward the door. He kicked it open and burst into the night, running toward the road that led back to the village. His heart hammered against his ribs as he ran barefoot through the dust, too terrified to look behind him. But he didn't have to look, he could hear it following. The scraping of bare feet dragging across gravel. The soft clatter of bones. The faint whisper that rose and fell with the wind. "You opened the door." He reached the center of the village, panting, and stumbled to his knees near the shrine of the ancestors, a small wooden structure decorated with cowrie shells and palm leaves. He pressed his hands together and shouted, "Ancestors, please. Protect me." The wind stopped. For a moment, everything went still. Then, slowly, the air around the shrine began to shimmer, a soft, golden light blooming from the cowrie shells. The earth trembled faintly. And just like that, the sound of footsteps stopped. Kwame looked around, his breath ragged. The road behind him was empty. No creature, no coffin, no shadow. He stayed there for what felt like hours, until the first pale light of dawn crept over the hills. When the sun finally rose, the fear loosened its grip on him. He stood up slowly, his legs trembling, and looked toward the direction of the cemetery. From here, he could still see the roof of his shop, or what was left of it. The hole where the coffin had crashed through gaped wide like a wound. Kwame wiped the sweat from his brow. "It's over," he whispered. "It must be over." But even as he said it, he didn't believe it. He went straight to Nana Efua's hut as soon as the market drums began to sound. The old woman listened to his story with closed eyes, her wrinkled hands resting on her knees. When he finished, she opened her eyes slowly. "It wasn't the gatekeeper you saw in that coffin," she said. Kwame frowned. "Then who was it?" She sighed. "Sometimes, when the gate between worlds opens, not only the spirit who guards it walks through. Others see the light too, restless souls who long for warmth, for flesh, for life again. You have become their path." Her words made him shiver. "So they can still come?" "Yes," she said. "Until the gate is sealed, they will keep trying. You must rebuild the gatekeeper's rest before the next moon is full, or the dead will not stop walking." Kwame rubbed his face with both hands. "How do I rebuild it?" "You must return what was taken from him," she said, standing to gather her charms and herbs. "Every piece of wood, every stone you used to build your shop, it all came from his land. You must offer it back, one by one. Only then will the gatekeeper close the door again." Kwame stared at her in disbelief. "But Nana, that means tearing down my shop completely." She looked at him sadly. "Better to lose a shop than your soul." He knew she was right, but his heart felt heavy. That shop had been his dream, everything he'd worked for, everything he'd saved for years to build. But as he remembered the voice that had whispered in the dark, and the thing that had crawled from the coffin, he realized that no dream was worth dying for. So that same afternoon, Kwame returned to the cemetery, his hammer and axe in hand. The villagers watched from a distance, whispering, but none dared to help him. He began with the roof, tearing down each plank and stacking it beside the fence. As the sun sank lower, he walked faster, afraid of being caught by night. Sweat dripped from his face, and his arms ached, but he didn't stop. When only half the shop remained, the wind began to change. It grew colder, sharper, carrying a faint whisper that made the hairs on his neck rise. "Stop!" Kwame froze. The voice was faint, coming from somewhere near the broken grave. He turned slowly. The headstone that had been cracked now stood straight again, whole. The soil beneath it shimmered faintly, as though something beneath was breathing. Nana Efua said this would bring peace, Kwame muttered to himself. I have to finish. He lifted the hammer to strike another plank loose, but then he heard it again, louder this time. Stop! The wind rushed suddenly, scattering dust and ashes into the air. He dropped the hammer and shielded his eyes. When the dust cleared, someone was standing in front of him. It was a man, tall, dressed in old tattered cloth, with dark skin that seemed to shimmer with light. His eyes glowed like fire, but his face was calm. The gatekeeper. Kwame fell to his knees. Please, I didn't mean to disturb your rest. I only wanted to build my shop. I will return everything, I swear. The gatekeeper's voice was deep and steady. You have already begun to mend what was broken. But it is not enough. Kwame looked up, confused. What else must I do? The gatekeeper's gaze shifted toward the village. Another has crossed. The one you saw last night. He does not wish to return. He seeks to stay among the living, to use your flesh as his vessel. Kwame's stomach turned. My flesh. The spirit nodded slowly. He wears the face of the forgotten, the lost one who was buried without a name. He came through the gate when you broke the ground. He cannot stay unless he takes the body of the man who opened the door, you. Kwame's whole body trembled. Tell me how to stop him. The gatekeeper stepped closer. You must face him before the next moon rises. Alone. At the place where the earth first cracked, the grave with the broken gate. There, you must offer him what he seeks most. Kwame frowned. And what does he seek most? The gatekeeper's eyes darkened. Life. Kwame's heart nearly stopped. But I can't give him that. I can't give him my life. The spirit's gaze was firm. Then he would take it. And just like that, the gatekeeper faded, dissolving into the air like smoke. Kwame fell to the ground, his breath ragged, his hands shaking so violently he could barely hold his tools. He looked toward the graveyard, toward the silent rows of tombs glowing under the setting sun, and knew that the true terror had not even begun. That night, as darkness covered the village once more, Kwame sat by the edge of the cemetery, staring at the cracked earth that marked the gatekeeper's resting place. The wind was still. The air thick. Then, from somewhere deep within the ground, came a faint sound, slow and steady. Thump, thump, thump. Like a heartbeat. And then, rising from the earth itself, came a whisper that froze his blood cold. Kwame, the night of the moon is near, and I am coming for you. The whisper echoed in Kwame's head long after it faded into the wind. He sat frozen beside the grave, staring at the trembling soil where the sound had come from. Every muscle in his body screamed for him to run, but something deeper, a strange pull, like invisible hands gripping his soul, kept him rooted to the spot. He could feel it beneath the earth, something alive, waiting, growing stronger as the moon climbed higher in the sky. Kwame finally forced himself to move. He stumbled back toward the village, his heart pounding in his chest, his feet barely touching the ground. By the time he reached his hut, sweat clung to his skin though the night was cold. He shut the door, dropped to his knees, and whispered, "Ancestors, protect me. I didn't mean to open the door. I didn't mean to bring this thing here." But no voice answered. Only the soft creak of the wind passing through the cracks of his wooden walls. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat upright till dawn, clutching his hammer, the same one he'd used to build the shop. Every now and then, he thought he heard faint footsteps outside his hut. When he peered through the cracks, nothing was there. But the air smelled faintly of wet earth. When morning came, Kwame went straight to Nana Efua's hut again. The old woman was sitting outside, grinding herbs with a wooden pestle. She looked up before he even spoke. "It has started, hasn't it?" she said quietly. Kwame nodded, his voice shaking. He spoke to me. The one who crossed. He said he's coming for me when the moon is full. Nana Efua sighed deeply. The full moon is only 2 nights away. You must prepare. How? Kwame asked desperately. The gatekeeper said I have to face him alone. What if he's stronger than me? The old woman stopped grinding and met his eyes. He is not looking for your strength, Kwame. He's looking for your fear. That is what gives him power. When he calls, he will use voices you know, faces you love. He will twist your memories and make you doubt yourself. You must hold your ground. You must remember who you are. Kwame swallowed hard. And what do I offer him? The gatekeeper said he seeks life. Nana Efua reached into her hut and brought out a small calabash wrapped in red cloth. She untied it carefully and revealed a smooth, round stone inside, black as night, yet gleaming with an inner light. This, she said, is an Okana stone. It holds the memory of a living soul. When offered with the right words, it can trick a spirit that seeks life. He will think it is your essence, your life, and take it instead. Kwame's eyes widened. Where did you get this? It was given to me long ago, she said softly. But listen to me, boy, the trick will only work once. If he discovers the stone is not your true soul before the sun rises, he will drag you back into the grave with him. Kwame took the calabash with trembling hands. Then I'll make sure he never finds out. For the next 2 days, he prepared. He tore down what was left of his shop, piling the wood beside the broken grave as an offering. He scrubbed the earth clean around the gatekeeper's tomb and carved new symbols into the soil, just as Nana Efua instructed. The villagers watched from afar, whispering, afraid to come near. As the sun began to set on the 2nd day, the sky turned a deep, bruised red. The wind grew still, and not a single bird sang. Even the trees seemed to bend away from the cemetery. Kwame stood alone beside the open grave, the Okana stone clutched tightly in his hand. The moon, large and white, began to rise behind the hills. This is it, he whispered. If I fail, no one else will be safe. The moment the moonlight touched the grave, the ground began to tremble. Dust rose into the air. The headstones around him shook and cracked. From somewhere deep in the earth came a sound like thunder. Then, silence. Kwame took a deep breath. I know you're there, he said, trying to sound brave. Show yourself. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, from the far end of the cemetery, a shape began to rise. It moved slowly, like a shadow lifting itself out of the ground. As it came closer, the air grew colder, the smell of soil and rot filling Kwame's lungs. When the figure finally stepped into the moonlight, Kwame's heart nearly stopped. It was wearing his face. Same eyes. Same mouth. Same hands. Everything. But its skin was pale as ash, and where its heart should have been, there was a black hole that pulsed faintly with light. Kwame, it said, smiling. You've been waiting for me. Kwame stumbled backward. You're not me. Oh, but I am, it said softly. You called me when you broke the ground. You gave me form when you built your shop. You and I, we are the same now. One of us must remain. Kwame raised the calabash. I came to give you what you want, life. Take this, and go back where you came from. The creature tilted its head. Do you think you can fool me, Kwame? Do you think I don't know what you're holding? Kwame's breath caught. The spirit's smile widened. That stone carries a shadow of life, not the real thing. You can't trick death. Panic shot through Kwame's veins. He took a step back, clutching the calabash tighter. Then you'll have to take it by force. The spirit laughed, a cold, hollow laugh that made the ground shiver. Very well. It lunged forward, faster than lightning. Kwame threw the calabash to the ground, and the stone inside burst into light, flooding the graveyard with a blinding glow. The spirit screamed, stumbling backward as smoke rose from its chest. Kwame fell to his knees, covering his eyes. The light pulsed brighter and brighter, until suddenly, it shot upward like a pillar into the sky. The graves rattled, and the air was filled with the sound of 1,000 whispers, voices of the dead, crying out in anger, in fear, in longing. Then, out of the smoke, a tall figure appeared, the Gatekeeper. His fiery eyes burned through the mist. "You have done well, mortal," he said. "The stone's light weakens him. But you must finish it now. Offer the rest of your work, your labor, your creation, the shop you built, to seal the gate forever." Kwame turned toward the pile of wood from his shop. The boards, the nails, the carvings, everything he had ever built, his dream. His life's work. He hesitated only for a moment. Then he struck a match. The flames caught quickly, roaring to life as the dry wood burned. The fire's light danced across the gravestones, and the air grew thick with heat and smoke. The spirit screamed again, its form flickering, breaking apart. "No," it cried. "You can't destroy it. It's part of you." Kwame shouted over the roar of the fire. "Then let it burn." The spirit lunged one last time, trying to reach him, but the Gatekeeper raised his hand, and chains of light shot from the flames, wrapping around the spirit's body. It screamed, twisting and writhing, until finally it was dragged down into the burning earth. The ground sealed shut. The fire died suddenly, leaving only smoke and ashes. Kwame collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. The Gatekeeper stood over him, silent, glowing faintly in the moonlight. "You have restored balance," the spirit said softly. "The door is closed again." Kwame looked up weakly. "Is it over?" The Gatekeeper nodded. "For now." The spirit began to fade, its voice echoing like the wind. "But remember, Kwame, the living and the dead share one earth. The next time a man builds without listening, another door may open." And then, he was gone. Kwame sat alone in the ashes of what had been his dream. The night was silent again, no whispers, no footsteps, no breath of cold wind. Only the soft hoot of an owl somewhere far away. He stared at the rising moon, his heart heavy but alive. "Maybe it's better this way," he murmured. "The dead can rest, and so can I." But as he stood to leave, he noticed something. Half buried in the ashes of the fire was the O'Connor stone, cracked, but still faintly glowing. And inside that glow, for just a moment, he saw something move, a faint shadow, shaped like a man's face, smiling. Kwame's blood ran cold. Then the light went out. And the stone split in two. Kwame stared at the broken stone for what felt like hours. The ashes around it still smoked faintly, curling upward like ghostly fingers reaching for the night sky. His breath came in shaky bursts. He wanted to believe it was over, that the spirit was gone, the gate sealed, and the nightmare finished. But the crack in the O'Connor stone whispered otherwise. He bent down slowly and touched one half of the stone. It was still warm. As his fingers brushed the surface, a sharp jolt of energy ran through him. A voice, faint, almost like a memory, whispered, "You can't destroy what's already inside you." Kwame jerked his hand back. "No," he muttered. "No more tricks. You're gone." He buried the pieces beneath the ashes and walked away, leaving the cemetery behind as dawn broke across the sky. For days afterward, the village was quiet again. No whispers, no cold winds, no moving shadows. The children came back out to play, and the elders began to visit the cemetery without fear. The people even started speaking to Kwame again, softly, carefully, as though they feared one wrong word might wake whatever had once haunted him. Nana Efua came to see him often. She would bring food and sit with him while he rebuilt his hut, though this time, he refused to build anywhere near the graveyard. "You did well," she told him one evening, watching him repair his roof. Few men would have survived what you faced. Kwame gave a faint smile. I only did what I had to do. The old woman studied him for a moment. You still see things, don't you? Kwame paused, his hammer mid-swing. Sometimes, he admitted. In my dreams. I see the fire. The graves. And I hear him calling my name, like an echo in a deep well. She nodded slowly. Spirits leave their mark when they touch a man's soul. But you must not answer when he calls. If you do, he'll find his way back. Kwame nodded, trying to convince himself it would fade with time. But as the days turned to weeks, small things began to happen. At first, it was just a sound, the faint tapping of metal on wood, like someone hammering nails at night. He thought it was just the wind playing tricks on him. Then one morning, he woke to find his tools arranged neatly outside his door, the same way he used to line them up when he had his shop. Only this time, the handles were cold and damp, covered with a fine layer of cemetery dust. He told himself it was nothing. That maybe the children had done it as a prank. But that night, as he sat beside his fire, he heard a soft voice outside his hut. Kwame. He froze. The voice was calm, gentle, almost kind. Familiar. He rose slowly and walked to the door. When he opened it, there was no one there. Only the moonlight spilling across the ground, and a single set of footprints leading away from his hut. Footprints that stopped halfway through the field, and vanished. The next morning, he went to Nana Efua's hut again, clutching his hammer tightly. He's back, he said, his eyes wild. The one from the grave. The old woman frowned. Did you answer him? Kwame hesitated. I opened the door. Nana Efua gasped. Oh, foolish boy. That was the door between the worlds. When you built your shop, you broke it. When you burned it, you closed it. But every time you listen, every time you look, you open it again. Kwame's hands trembled. What do I do now? The old woman grabbed his wrist and placed a charm of cowrie shells in his palm. You must go back, one last time. You must finish what began there. Burn what's left beneath the grave, and bury this charm in its ashes. Only then will he lose his path to you. Kwame's eyes widened. Go back. To that place. Yes, she said firmly. The dead know where to find the living. But if the living stand their ground, the dead will rest. That night, he set out again for the cemetery, clutching the charm and his hammer. The moon was full once more, and the graveyard seemed alive, whispering, moving, breathing. When he reached the spot where his shop once stood, the ashes were cold. The air hung thick and heavy. The broken cornerstone still lay where he'd left it, half buried in the dirt. He knelt, dug a shallow pit, and placed the charm inside. This ends tonight, he whispered. But before he could cover it, a hand shot out of the ground and grabbed his wrist. Kwame screamed and stumbled backward as the soil burst open. From the hole rose the pale figure, the same one that had worn his face, but now it was different. The flesh was gone, the bones darkened, the eye sockets filled with blue fire. You thought you could hide from me, the spirit hissed. You burned the wood, broke the stone, but you cannot burn your shadow, Kwame. I am the part of you that the gatekeeper could not take. Kwame staggered to his feet, raising his hammer. I'm not afraid of you anymore. The spirit laughed, a hollow, chilling sound. Then prove it. Strike me, and you strike yourself. Kwame hesitated. The spirit stepped closer, the blue fire flaring brighter. You built me, Kwame. Every nail, every board, every greedy dream. You fed me with your fear. And now, I am the price. The ground shook violently. The grave split open, and faint figures began to rise, not solid, but shimmering like smoke. The air filled with whispers. He opened the door he built on the sacred ground. Kwame fell to his knees, clutching his head. No more. Please, no more. The spirit reached out, its bony fingers inches from Kwame's face. There is only one way to end this. Give me what you owe. Kwame looked up, tears in his eyes. If it's my life you want, take it. He dropped the hammer. The spirit froze, its eyes flickering. You would give yourself freely. Yes, Kwame said. If it means the village will be safe. Take me, and leave them alone. For the first time, the spirit hesitated. The whispers fell silent. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Then, slowly, the spirit reached down and touched Kwame's forehead. The blue fire dimmed. You have learned, it said softly. A man who builds without respect takes from the living and the dead. But a man who gives, even when afraid, restores balance. The ground beneath Kwame glowed faintly. The spirit began to fade, turning into a swirl of dust and light. As it disappeared, it whispered one last time, rest easy, builder. The door is closed. Kwame fell forward, unconscious. When he awoke, it was morning. The graveyard was calm again, peaceful. The sun shone over the graves, and the air smelled of earth and new grass. The broken cornerstone was gone. So was the charm. But where he had buried them, a single green shoot had sprouted, small, but alive. He smiled weakly. Maybe some doors should stay closed, he murmured. From that day, Kwame never built again. Instead, he taught the young men of the village to respect the land, to listen before they built, to leave the dead in peace. The graveyard became a place of silence and flowers once more. And though the villagers spoke of the night the earth burned and the gatekeeper walked, no one ever dared build near it again. But on nights when the moon was full, the children swore they could still see a faint figure walking among the graves, a man with kind eyes, carrying a hammer of light, guarding the resting souls and watching over those who lived. And when the wind passed through the village, it carried a soft whisper. He built his shop near the cemetery, but he never expected this.